Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to the Flutter Study Jam Hangouts on Air number 2, presented by GDG Kansas City. We are GDG Kansas City. We're a nonprofit volunteer user group focused on presenting content around and around anything Google related. Whether it's Flutter, Android, Kotlin, or anything web-based, we try to present in and around topics on that. My name is Jay Whitsitt. On the Hangout today, we also have Rachel Wallace, and Roger O'Dell and Vince Garcia are two of our other organizers but couldn't be here today. You found us somehow. Today's meetup is on Hangouts on Air and YouTube Live. But usually, when we don't have special events like this, we meet in person, and all of our meetups, whether online or in person, we post to meetup.com, but also post everything to Twitter, Facebook, and also our website, gggkc.org. And if you want to follow along on anything we're doing and any topics that we're presenting on, you can join our Slack at slack.gggkc.org. So this is the second meetup, the second Hangouts on Air, I should say, for the Flutter Study Jam. We already went over Lesson 1 and Lesson 2 over the last few weeks. So today we will, I will actually be presenting on how to export your app into an APK or an IPA, or to upload to the App Store or the Google Play Store. We'll have a Q&A if anybody has any questions about anything, and we'll maybe get some feedback on some projects that some of you are presenting for the project presentations that are actually going to be next week on August 21st. Most of our meetups are at the Google Fiber space, but next week is special. The Fiber space wasn't available, so we'll actually be meeting at the PlexCloud Crossroads, which is in downtown Kansas City, at the normal time of 6:30. So everything we're going to talk about today is all about Flutter. So like I said, over the last few weeks, we've gone over Lesson 1. Last week, we had started Lesson 2, and hopefully most of you have got well into Lesson 2. So I just kind of wanted to give a brief overview of some of the things that the facilitators mentioned in Lesson 2. So we had learned about async awaits and connecting to APIs. So if you need to make some API call to either like the Meetup API or find the weather in Florida, you don't want your UI to get bogged down and frozen, so you need to use async await. And also, they talked about introducing plugins like Future, which kind of handle some of those async await processes. And then there were a few other things that they did, but I thought it was also important to call out themes. They kind of walked through how to create your own themes and how to, so that you can make a really beautiful app that users want to use. So today, like I said earlier, I kind of wanted to talk about how to export your app into either an APK format to upload to the Google Play Store, or archive your app through Xcode and upload it to the iOS App Store if you wanted to actually publish your app. That wasn't really something that they talked about in the study jam, so I thought that would be a good thing to kind of cover in our last Hangouts on Air. So let's get started with that. So when I was kind of trying to find out what to do, the first thing I did was Google it. But like most things Flutter, Flutter.io has a lot of resources, including how to actually do this export process. So if you go to Docs and then scroll down on the left side here, it actually has a built-in release for Android and built-in release for iOS page. So this walks you through the general process of how to do it. But if you're not completely familiar with Android or iOS development, some of these steps may not be very clear. For example, the app manifest in Android is pretty important when you're building your app and exporting it. That's where you have the things like the app icon and the app name that shows up on the user's home screen. And iOS has something similar. So you may not really know where to go to find those things, and there's some details in here that aren't super clear if you're not already familiar with platforms. So let's get started. So the first thing, I already went through and created a clone of this app that they create in this Write Your First Flutter app page. So this is basically just an ever-ending list of random two words. You can scroll and it just keeps creating words. You can scroll back up and it saves the state, saves what words on what line. So we're not going to walk through this, but just wanted to show how I got to the app that I'm going to start with. So if we go here, so this is that app. So you can see in, we're going to be, everything comes out of the main.dart is where your app starts. The main build function returns a material app that has a scaffold, which has an app bar, and the view that's actually, or the widget that's on the screen is random words. And so this random words is a stateful widget, which has a state that basically is just, it returns a list view that uses some generated word pairs. So pretty simple, not a whole lot to it. We will run it to see what it actually looks like. And I did also want to call out, today I'm actually using VS Code. Throughout the study jam, we went through everything using Android Studio. And the facilitators mentioned that you could also use like Xcode and VS Code, but I wanted to kind of show a different way of doing things here. So here it is. You have a never-ending list of two words. If you scroll, it just keeps going. Pretty simple, not a whole lot to it. But we're not going to talk about, or we're not going to kind of dive into how the app was made. We're going to talk more about the app manifest file and the Xcode product file. So if you go back to your page on flutter.io that walks you through how to build and release for Android, we will start with the app manifest. So this file has things like what permissions the app uses, application name that shows up, your package name, if you're familiar with Java or Android already. It also points to things like your app icon. So the first thing it says to do is to edit the application tag to reflect the final name of the app. So that's pretty easy. Everything for your Android app will be under this Android folder. So where you edited all your Dart and Flutter files or in lib, everything we're going to talk about for this Android piece is going to be for the Android folder. And this folder is actually a working Android project. So you would be able to open this folder in Android Studio, and it would look exactly like a regular Android project. There are a few other differences. So in this app folder, you'll have your build.gradle file. And in here, it actually has, this actually is already done. So I'm just going to remove all the things that would need to be edited. Okay, we can go back and do the rest later. So in here, it has a couple things. So there are some settings that it pulls from a Flutter-specific Gradle file. There are, when you start, this should be com.example. I think it'll be whatever this is the Flutter project name you used when you created your Flutter project. And I believe that is all the specifics about this one that are Flutter specific. So the first thing you want to do is you want to change your app name. So that is, oops, and I'm running an iOS, so let me switch to Android really quick. And if you're already running Flutter on Visual Studio, most of the commands you're going to want to do through the terminal. So you'll manage your emulators using Flutter emulator, and that'll kind of say the different emulators that you have. And so right here it says if you want to run a different emulator, you can use Flutter emulators -- launch, and then enter your emulator ID, which is this first thing right here. So it'll be just that, emulators launch. And it'll run through and launch second emulator. There we go. Maybe. There we go. Just took a little bit. Okay, so the package name, or the application tags reflect the final name of the app. So the application name is set in the Android manifest file, which is right here. So that is going to be this Android label. So you can call this whatever you want. I actually already changed mine. We can make it foobar. And if we do a Flutter run, so you can see that it was Flutter words right here. Oh, I'll close my iPhone emulator there so that it's not confused. And again, builds the app, and once it resolves all the dependencies, sometimes it does take a little bit, just because if you're running something for the first time, it has to potentially download some things. Put it past the dependency part, so it shouldn't be too long. There we go. Built the APK, installing the APK, and you should see maybe before the app comes up this name change. Nope. I'll wait for it to finish. Okay. But if we go back to the home screen, oh, okay. So I have a second app on there, but you can see that it's called foobar now. So I'm gonna actually delete this other one. Change this back to Flutter words and reinstall it, and you'll see that it will actually say Flutter words instead of foobar now. So while that's building and installing, we'll go on to the next thing. So when you release your app, you want to be sure to remove the Android.permissions.internet if you're not actually making any internet calls. So the Android system uses these permission IDs to tell a couple things. If the system ever wanted to request, make the user accept that your app could have access to the internet, they could use that. Or it could also limit devices that can install it. So there's a couple different things, a couple different reasons why you want to be sure to do that. Flutter actually uses this permission in order to set up the hot reloading and debug sessions. It uses just kind of like an internal web server to communicate with your IDE back and forth so that it can give you all those debug tools. So if your app doesn't use the internet, you want to remove the Android.permission internet permission from the Android manifest file. So we'll go ahead and do that. So that is up here. So for now, we'll just comment it out. And that should be good. And then next thing is back in the build.gradle file. We want to make sure that the application ID is the one that we want to use on the Play Store. So this application ID is going to have to be unique for all of the Play Store. Usually it's a reverse domain. So if you remember before, I made ours org.gggkc.flutterwords. So our website is gggkc.org. Just reverse it and then do a dot and then some unique identifier for your app. And that'll make sure that it's unique for your specific app. So I already did that here. But when you do that, you'll also want to make sure to change your package name. Otherwise, I noticed that the app just crashes. So in your Java files, when you first come in here, this will be, it'll look much more similar to, this, where you have com, example, Flutterwords, or whatever your project is, and then you have your Java file, and then your package will look like this. So this is how Java namespaces, if you're familiar with Java. So you want to make sure that that also reflects your application. And move that back to org, gggkc, and then I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that unused domain name. All right. So now all of our files are back where they need to be, and our where'd it go? Our application ID is also updated. So the next thing is version code and version name. So version code is just a identifier for this specific build, basically. Some people use the number of commits since the beginning of your Git repo. There's lots of different options that you can do. But for now, we'll just leave this one because we're not actually going to be submitting this. And then version name is going to be your semantic versioning. So 1.0, 2.1, something like that. But we'll do that the same there too. And then min SDK version and target SDK version are Android-specific values. So these correspond with what SDK version of Android that you are targeting and what the minimum SDK that you support is. We're not going to get into that since this isn't an Android course. If you want to learn more about that, definitely check out developers.android.com. So next is going to be the app icon. So app icons on Android use kind of a little bit different naming convention. So everything just like on your in your Dart. I guess I don't have any resources right now in my Dart in my Flutter project. But if I did, there would be an asset folder, and then all my assets would be under that. It's somewhat similar in that there's a resource folder that's divided up into different categories that you can use. So on Android, for now, just know that the iclauncher.png right here is the app icon. And then these are just different sizes of that same icon. So if you look at this XXX HTTPI, that's a lot bigger than just the MTPI. So that is also going to be right here. Android icon is mitmap iclauncher. So if we wanted to move in a different app icon, we could just replace that iclauncher.png, or we can actually change the name of the image if we really wanted to. Okay, so the next part is another Android-specific thing, which is signing your app. So I won't get into all the details of what happens here, but basically the instructions that they gave here were pretty straightforward. You'll need to run your key tool in order to generate a key. So if you want in your terminal, you can just run that command that they enter, enter some password. Oops, well, I already went through this. So let me, okay. So if I enter a random password, it'll ask you for some other information. Similar to making a certificate, if you've ever done that. And then there we go. So we have our key store created. And so now we're going to want to go into our Gradle file. And the instructions actually give you, oh, well, so first thing I forgot about, you want to create your key.properties file. This actually is a file that you won't want to check into your Git repository if you have one. And it's right here. So this is just a file you create that points to, it's basically a lookup file that has your path to your file and the passwords that you used. I just used password because I'm not actually submitting this. And then in your Gradle file under app, it gives you this right here to paste in. So the instructions do a good job of walking you through this. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on that. If you want to, you can enable ProGuard, which basically obfuscates your code. That way it can't be reverse engineered. And it does also reduce the size of your APK a little bit, which is important if you have a really big app, or especially if you're targeting users in countries where they may not have very fast internet. So we'll skip that for right now. But then the most important part is to actually create your APK file. So the APK file is what you actually upload into the Play Store console so that you can release it to the world. So what you want to do is you'll want your working directory to be your Android app, or I'm sorry, your Flutter app directory, which we're already here. And then you'll do Flutter build APK. And so that runs your Gradle file. And Flutter build APK by default uses the release configuration. And so since all of this has release, it uses all of these release configurations. So it goes through, does the build process very similar to when you are debugging on a simulator, and then outputs your APK file right here. So if we look in the build, and then app, then outputs APK release, outputs APK release with an APK. So this file, you can actually just install on a device. You can install on an emulator if you want, or you can go to the Play Store console and actually upload it yourself. Pretty simple. So that's how you do an Android app. Next, we'll talk about an iOS app. A fairly similar process, just different, a few different steps. So iOS has some initial hurdles where Android kind of had the signing and building process was the big part at the end. So the first thing you want to do for iOS, Apple actually requires you to pay an annual subscription in order to have access to App Store Connect, which is where you upload your app to be published to the App Store. So we're going to skip this part. The instructions give a really good overview of how to do it. And if you have any questions about that, definitely feel free to reach out to me. I'm actually an iOS developer by day. So I'm very familiar with all of this, and the instructions on how to follow this process are also on developers.apple.com. So we're going to skip down to the Review Xcode project settings. And so the first thing is to open your project in Xcode. So Flutter actually creates an iOS project whenever you do a build. So where the Android project was in Android, the iOS project is in iOS. So in VS Code, they actually give you a pretty easy way to open your iOS project. If you right-click on iOS, it's not, oh, there it is, open in Xcode. If you right-click on your iOS folder, there's an open in Xcode item, and that will open the workspace file if that exists in the folder. If that doesn't exist, it would open the project file. So since this is a workspace, it opened the project, not the workspace. So let's just go back here, and we'll open the workspace instead. All right. So the first thing you want to do is select this target. So Flutter will create a project in a workspace called runner that has one target called runner. That's just what it uses. There's not a whole lot of meaning behind it that I found out, but that's just kind of what it uses. So your app name that shows up on your user's home screen is right here in display name. So by default, it'll be the project name that you use to create your project. Since I use Flutter words, all lowercase, one word, that's what it did. I can change this. And if I actually go back here, let's close this. And we'll switch to simulator. Oops. So you can actually see that if I change this project, it will once the simulator loads, it will actually change the name of this app right here from Flutter words to foobar, since that's what I changed the display name to. So while that's building, I'll move on to the next part. Just like you updated the application ID, you'll want another unique identifier for your iOS app. So on iOS, this is called a bundle identifier. So, and it's the same exact idea. So I used a reverse domain, org.ggkc dot a name for my app. And if we look at this home screen, you see now it says foobar instead of Flutter words. So the next thing you want to do is signing. If you haven't already set up your signing certificates and provisioning profiles on the Apple Developer Console, you'll want to be sure to do that now. You'll need to register your bundle identifier. There's an app ID there. Create your signing certificate, and you can just let Xcode manage your provisioning profiles if you want, or you can do it manually and uncheck this box. Details for that, like I said, are on developers.apple.com. So you'll select the team that you want, and then if we come down a little bit more, you'll also want to be sure to set your deployment target. So deployment target, very similar to the Min SDK version and Target SDK version for Android. Deployment target is the SDK is more similar to the Target SDK on Android. So this is the iOS SDK version that your app will be compiled with, and usually you'll just set this to the latest version, but that'll depend on your situation. So we won't change that for now. And then once you're done, you can actually update the app icon, just like you would any other iOS app. So iOS, just like Android, has an asset, kind of like an asset folder. On iOS, it's in an XC assets bundle. And then the app icon is here. So there's lots of different sizes for different places that this icon may exist. You'll want to be sure to fill all of those out. So now, if we scroll down a little more, we actually get to the point where we can create our archive. So when I was going through this, this line says that for Xcode 8.3 and later, you don't actually need to do some of this, but I found, at least for Xcode 9.4, I did have to do this section. So first thing you want to do is Flutter build iOS, just like Flutter build APK. That creates and updates the project and the release build for your iOS project. If we go back to Visual Studio Code, with the app so that I can use the terminal and do Flutter build iOS. So it runs through a process. This app isn't very big, so it doesn't take very long. And here we go. So it actually outputted or built our app, and that the .app file, which you can't really do a whole lot with right now, was under build app, or sorry, build iOS. There it is, and iPhone OS, and then runner.app. Okay. So yeah, like I said, you can't really do a whole lot with this right now. So we'll skip to the next section. And if you're familiar with iOS development and publishing the App Store, it's the same exact process for any other app you would do. So you'll, on the next code, be sure that you have your correct scheme selected, and then the generic iOS device is selected. You click on Product, and then Archive. So then this will run through a process that will create what's called an XC archive file, and that will open an organizer window in Xcode that lets you, you can do a few different things. You can, yeah, I'm not logged in with an account that's not a work account, so I'm not going to actually update this. But you can validate that your package is going to upload okay to the App Store before you actually do, to save you some time later. You can export it if you want to just put it on a device, or maybe you use something like Hockey App or some other continuous integration or deployment service. So that would give you an IPA file to distribute that way, or you can upload to the App Store here. And that's basically it. The rest of this just kind of walks through different places that you can put it. TestFlight is Apple's in-house, I should say Apple-hosted app kind of beta testing distribution service. And then you can also upload it to the App Store. Like I said, this has links to find more information about how to actually do this and how to create accounts on these places. And if you ever have a question, developers.apple.com has some documentation on that. So that is all of the content that I have. So we actually have Chuck on the Hangout today. And from what I remember, Chuck, you have a project that you wanted to kind of see if anybody else wanted to help out with. Did you want to introduce that, or I can if you'd rather me?
Yeah, I can. Are you able to share? Can I talk while you share your screen to show it?
Sure, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Let me get that up really quick. Oops, wrong window. It changed on me before I clicked it. There we go.
Okay, so what we got here is, I was wondering if some people in the GDD group were wanting to collaborate with me on doing a Flutter project, since the Flutter code is kind of hard to understand. So what we're doing here is we've got kind of a timeline of the project, kind of. So we've got like different phases of the project. So usually when I develop projects, I try to do it in phases. So it's the minimum product, like the features just start very small, and then you keep adding pieces onto that. So we've got phase 0 through phase 4 here. So I was probably trying to get phase 0 done by the end of this week here, but I figured if people want to start contributing to the project, we can try to get some more of these phases knocked out. Awesome. This is all conceptual here.
Oh, so just realized.
Yeah, it doesn't show me.
Yeah, you were on the on the video there, but now I'm presenting to everyone, I think.
There we go.
Yeah, so here's the GitHub repo. So GDGKC test, and the project is meet@foodie, and he's got some kind of outlines of what the screens could look like, and it's separated into different phases there. Yeah, so if anybody would want to participate in that, I think it's a really good idea for a project. I like how the phases are split up. So you have your basic UI that doesn't really call any APIs or anything like that. You add some interactivity to it so you can make it a little more useful. Add some reading from files and images, and then make it
convenient.
Yeah, so at the end you say using a database. Do you know what you would want to use for a database?
Oh, it can be a file or a database. I think there's the built-in MySQLite thing.
Yeah.
Or we could even do, if you want to get more advanced, you could do a Firebase.
Yeah, I think it would be cool. You could probably start with like a local database, and then, because I know we would probably end up using this if there was some like a network connection to either Firebase or somewhere else that we could share the information between our devices. So that could be a phase 5 if you wanted.
Yeah, phase 5 could be like the setup screen for all the items, the prices and stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I like that idea. Yeah. So if you want to contribute, just either reach out to me or Chuck. We're both on Slack. So yeah. Well, that is, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else that you wanted to mention, Chuck or Rachel?
I didn't have anything else either. Just the reminder about next week.
Awesome.
How about you, Chuck? Did you have any more on your project?
No, that's about it right now. It's kind of just in its infancy right now. So,
well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what you can make and seeing if anybody else can help there. I think that'll be cool. All right. Well, if nobody has anything else, thanks for being on here, Chuck, and for anybody else tuning in. We will see everybody on August 21st at the PlexPod Crossroads at 6:30. And we'll have a short presentation at the beginning and then see what everybody's created on their own. Bye, everybody.